With $50 billion on her head and hitmen closing in, she hacked her way into the lair of the one man everyone feared. She offered him her life in exchange for 30 days of safety. But when the hunters kicked down the door, the billionaire recluse didn't negotiate. He stepped in front of the bullets, caught one in his bare hand, and snarled 2 words that changed the fate of the world. "She's mine." She stands on the edge of a precipice, holding a match to the only bridge that leads back to safety, unaware that the darkness she is jumping into his teeth. She thinks she is making a business deal. In reality, she is offering a lamb to a starving lion, hoping he is polite enough not to eat her. Avery Clark believes that 30 days of survival is the price for a fortune, but she doesn't know that the man she is begging for help has been waiting 400 years for someone to crack the code of his own mortality. She walks into the monster's lair to escape the hunters, only to realize that the monster is the only thing keeping the world from burning, and she is the match. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It only made the grime slicker, turning the city streets into black mirrors that reflected neon desperation. Avery Clark shivered, the sensation having nothing to do with the water soaking through her oversized hoodie and everything to do with the notification blinking on her smartwatch. 72 hours gone. 648 hours remaining. 3 days. She had survived 3 days since Arthur Pendleton's heart stopped, and the reading of his will had turned her life into a gruesome spectator sport. The lawyers had called it a eccentric stipulation. Avery called it a death sentence. Survive 30 days and Pendleton Tech, $50 billion of proprietary AI and defense contracts, was hers. Die, and it won his 3 nephews. Nephews who were currently 3 blocks behind her in a matte black SUV that moved through traffic like a shark through shallow water. Avery ducked into a narrow alleyway, her fingers flying across the cracked screen of her tablet. Her breath hitched in her throat, a jagged sound against the drumming rain. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a spy. She was a 24-year-old coder who preferred the company of servers to people. But fear was a potent teacher. In 72 hours, she had learned to hotwire a lock, sleep with one eye open, and recognize the specific, heavy tread of hired mercenaries. "Come on," she whispered, the command desperate as she bypassed the firewall of the city's traffic grid. "Give me red." On the main avenue, the lights snapped from green to red instantly. Tires screeched. Metal crunched against metal. The chaotic symphony of a pileup echoed through the canyon of glass buildings. It bought her 3 minutes. Maybe 4. She looked up. Looming above the skyline like a jagged shard of obsidian was Nightfall Tower. It was a fortress of black glass and steel, the headquarters of Ravenna Corp., the only rival Pendleton Tech had ever failed to crush. Its CEO, Dante Ravenna, was a ghost story in the tech world, a recluse who hadn't been photographed in a decade, a genius who released technology 10 years ahead of the curve, and a man Arthur Pendleton had hated with a venom that bordered on obsession. The enemy of my enemy, Avery thought, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. It was a stupid plan. It was a suicidal plan. But the nephews Julian, Marcus, and Silas weren't just greedy heirs. They were predators. She had seen the way they looked at her at the funeral, not with mourning, but with the cold, clinical assessment of a butcher eyeing a cut of meat. She pulled her hood lower and sprinted toward the tower. The lobby of Nightfall Tower was a cathedral to silence. The air was cooler here, conditioned to a precise, sterile chill. Avery walked in, her wet sneakers squeaking aggressively against the marble floor. The security desk was empty, which was wrong. A building like this should have armed guards, metal detectors, thermal scanners. Instead, it had silence heavy as velvet. She approached the elevator bank, plugging a USB drive into the maintenance port. Her code, a masterpiece of polymorphic encryption she'd written in a dorm room, began to eat through the building's security protocols. Access denied. Avery frowned. She typed faster. Access denied. Panic flared, hot and bright. No, no, no. You're the best, she muttered to herself. Work. Suddenly, the screen on the elevator panel flickered. The red denial text vanished, replaced by a single, elegant line of green text. Entering. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Avery froze. She hadn't cracked the code. The code had opened for her. It was a trap. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to run back into the rain, to take her chances with the mercenaries and their guns. But the sensor on the door detected her hesitation and held the car open, waiting. An invitation. She stepped inside. The ascent took 40 seconds to reach the penthouse floor, a vertical shot into the clouds. When the doors opened, Avery wasn't greeted by a reception desk or a waiting room. She stepped directly into a cavernous space that spanned the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the rain-swept city, but the room itself was bathed in shadow, lit only by the amber glow of a fireplace that looked large enough to roast a whole ox. "You have wet shoes on my Persian rug," a voice said. It didn't come from the desk at the far end. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a baritone rumble that vibrated in the floorboards. Avery spun around, her hand tightening on the strap of her backpack. Standing by the window, looking out at the storm, was a man. He was tall, with the lean, predatory grace of a greyhound. He wore a suit that cost more than her college tuition, tailored to a frame that seemed too still, too rigid. "Dante Ravenna," Avery said. Her voice shook, betraying her. She hated that. He turned. The breath left Avery's lungs. Photographs, even the old ones, didn't do him justice. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that felt severe, sharp angles and pale skin that seemed to drink the dim light. But it was his eyes that froze her. They were dark, darker than the night outside, but there was a stillness in them that felt ancient. When he looked at her, she felt like he was reading the metadata of her soul. "Avery Clark," he replied. He didn't raise his voice, yet it carried across the 60 feet between them with perfect clarity. "Arthur Pendleton's protégé. The unexpected heir. The girl with a billion-dollar target on her back." He took a step toward her. He moved with a fluid, liquid grace that was unnerving. No wasted energy. No bobbing of the head. Just smooth, lethal motion. "How did you get past my firewall?" he asked. "I didn't," Avery admitted, lifting her chin. "You let me in." "I was curious," Dante said. He stopped 10 feet away. The air around him felt colder, charged with static electricity like the moments before a lightning strike. It is rare for a mouse to run into the serpent's nest to escape the cats. "I'm not a mouse," Avery snapped. "And I have a proposition." Dante tilted his head, a micro-movement that conveyed amusement. "Do you? You have 72 hours of survival under your belt. You reek of rain, fear, and stale coffee. And you are currently being tracked by 3 men who have killed for much less than $50 billion. What could you possibly offer me?" "Pendleton's AI," Avery said. The words hung in the air. Dante went still. Even the fire seemed to dampen. "The sentience protocol?" "The source code," Avery confirmed. "Everything. The neural networks, the predictive algorithms, the encryption keys. It's all in my head and on this drive. If I die, the nephews get the company, but they don't get the code. I have it dead man's switched to delete itself upon the confirmation of my death. And if I save you? You keep me alive for 30 days, Avery said, her voice gaining strength. I claim the inheritance. I sign the rights to the AI over to Ravenna Corporation. Then I disappear." Dante studied her. He looked at the pulse jumping frantically in her neck. He could hear the frantic rhythm of her heart, a drum solo of terror. He could smell the adrenaline spiking in her blood, a sweet, metallic scent that made the hunger in his gut coil tight. It had been 50 years since he had hunted, truly hunted, but the instinct never died. It just slept. "You are asking me to declare war on the Pendleton family," Dante said softly. "They're just businessmen with hired guns," Avery argued. Dante laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound, devoid of humor. "Businessmen. Is that what Arthur told you?" "He told me they were ruthless." "He told you nothing," Dante murmured. He turned his back to her, walking toward the fireplace. "Go. Leave my tower, Miss Clark. I have no need for Arthur's toys, and I have no desire to clean your blood off my floors when the nephews inevitably breach the perimeter. They're downstairs," Avery yelled. The desperation finally cracked her composure. "I hacked their comms. They know I'm here. They're coming up. Please. Dante paused. He looked at the fire, the flames dancing in his irises. They're entering the lobby? Yes. Armed? Heavily. Dante sighed. It was a sound of profound weariness. Very well. He turned back to her, and for a split second, his face changed. The human mask slipped. His lips parted, and Avery saw the flash of something white and sharp. The shadows in the room seemed to lengthen, reaching for him like loyal dogs. I will keep you alive, Dante said. But the price has changed. Avery swallowed hard. What do you want? You, he said. Avery stepped back. Excuse me. Not like that, Dante said, his lip curling in distaste. I don't want your body, Miss Clark. I want your mind. You work for me. Indefinitely. You become my asset. You live where I say, you code what I tell you, and you never, ever leave my sight unless I permit it. That sounds like slavery, Avery whispered. It is employment with extreme benefits, Dante corrected. The primary benefit being that you continue to breathe. A heavy thud echoed from the elevator bank. The sound of metal forcing metal. They were here. Do we have a deal? Dante asked. He extended a hand. His fingers were long, pale, and steady. Avery looked at the elevator doors, which were beginning to warp under the pressure of a crowbar. She looked at Dante. He was terrifying, yes. But there was a strange calmness to him, a control that the chaotic violence of the nephews lacked. She reached out and took his hand. His skin was ice cold. Not cool. Cold. Like marble in winter. Deal, she gasped. As soon as their skin touched, a shockwave seemed to pass through Dante. His eyes widened slightly, the pupils blowing wide until his eyes were almost entirely black. He gripped her hand tighter, pulling her behind him. Stay close, he commanded. And close your eyes. Why? Because, Dante said, his voice dropping to a growl that vibrated in her chest, you are not meant to see what monsters do to other monsters. The elevator doors burst open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed out, assault rifles raised. Behind them stood Julian Pendleton, wearing a bespoke suit soaked in rain, a smug grin plastered on his face. Found you, you little rat, Julian sneered, raising a handgun. Dante didn't move. He simply stood there, a statue of elegant menace. You're trespassing, Julian. Julian laughed. Dante Ravenna. The hermit. Step aside, old man. This is family business. She is my employee, Dante said. And she is under my protection. She's a corpse, Julian corrected. He leveled the gun at Avery, peeking out from behind Dante's shoulder. Julian pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Avery flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, waiting for the pain. It never came. She heard a sound like a whip cracking snap. Then the clatter of metal on the floor. Then a scream. Avery opened her eyes. Dante was no longer in front of her. He was across the room, standing amidst the tactical team. He had moved so fast her eyes hadn't registered it. He was a blur of motion, a shadow that hit with the force of a freight train. The bullet Julian had fired was lying on the Persian rug, flattened, as if it had hit a steel wall. Dante held one of the mercenaries by the throat, lifting the 200-pound man off the ground with one hand. He didn't look strained. He looked bored. I said, Dante enunciated, his voice echoing with a terrible power, leave. He tossed the mercenary into Julian, knocking them both into the open elevator car. The other 2 men opened fire. Avery screamed, Dante. But Dante didn't dodge. He simply walked through the hail of bullets. The rounds hit his suit, puffing small clouds of dust, but he didn't bleed. He didn't stumble. He moved like a force of nature, inevitable and unstoppable. He grabbed the barrels of the rifles, twisting the steel as if it were warm taffy. He backhanded the first man, sending him flying through the air to crash into the wall with a bone-crunching thud. The second man turned to run, but Dante was already there, gripping the back of his tactical vest and hurling him into the elevator with the others. Julian scrambled up, his face pale, eyes wide with a terror that transcended the fear of death. He looked at Dante, really looked at him, and saw something that made him scramble backward. You! Julian gasped. The stories, the files. Get out, Dante whispered. The doors began to close. Julian smashed the button, his hands shaking. As the doors slid shut, Dante stood perfectly still, his chest not even heaving from the exertion. Silence rushed back into the room, louder than the gunfire. Avery stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth. The smell of gunpowder hung thick in the air. She looked at Dante's back. The back of his suit jacket was shredded, revealing a white dress shirt underneath. There were holes in the shirt, but no blood. Slowly, Dante turned around. He adjusted his cuffs. He straightened his tie. Then he looked at her. His eyes were slowly returning to their normal dark hue, the inky blackness receding. "Are you injured?" he asked. His tone was casual, as if asking if she wanted coffee. Avery couldn't speak. She pointed a shaking finger at his chest. You were shot. 10 times. I saw it." Dante looked down at his ruined suit. "A pity. Italian wool." "You're not bleeding," Avery whispered. "You moved. Nobody moves like that." Dante walked over to the desk and pressed a button. "Cleanup crew to the penthouse. And send up a new suit. Charcoal gray." He released the button and looked at Avery. The distance was gone. He looked at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I told you to close your eyes, Avery." "What are you?" she breathed. Dante walked past her, the scent of ozone and rain trailing him. He stopped at the wet bar and poured a glass of amber liquid. He didn't drink it. He just held the glass, staring into the liquid. "I am your employer," he said. "And I suggest you get some rest. The guest suite is down the hall to the left. Lock the door. Do not come out until sunrise." "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what just happened," Avery said, her curiosity overriding her fear. It was her fatal flaw. She had to know how the machine worked. Dante turned, his expression unreadable. "You think you are solving a puzzle, Miss Clark. But some puzzles bite back." He set the glass down. "Julian Pendleton knows what I am. Or at least, he suspects. That is why he ran. The Pendletons have known about my kind for generations." "Your kind?" "Vampires," Dante said. The word dropped into the room like a stone into a deep well. Avery stared at him. She waited for the punchline. She waited for him to smile. He didn't. She replayed the last 2 minutes in her head. The speed. The strength. The bullets bouncing off him. The cold skin. "Vampires," she repeated. "Like Dracula." "Stoker was a hack," Dante muttered. "Overdramatic and entirely inaccurate regarding the garlic." "So you drink blood." "I require it to sustain existence, yes." "And you're going to eat me?" Dante looked at her, his gaze lingering on the pulse point of her neck for a fraction of a second too long. "If I wanted to kill you, Avery, you would have been dead before the elevator doors opened. You are safe here. As long as you obey the rules." "Rules." "Rule number 1, Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Never bleed in my presence. Rule number 2, do not open the heavy oak door in the east wing. Rule number 3, survive." He turned away, dismissing her. Avery stood there for a moment, her mind reeling. She had come here to save her life from corporate sharks, and she had sold her soul to a literal monster. But as she looked at him, standing alone by the window, isolated in his tower, watching a world he could never truly be part of, she didn't feel the terror she expected. She felt a strange, resonant pang of recognition. He was alone. Just like her. Without another word, she turned and walked down the hall toward the guest suite. She needed to think. She needed to analyze the data. And she needed to see what was on the encrypted drive Arthur Pendleton had left her. Because if Dante was a vampire and the Pendletons knew, then this wasn't just a corporate takeover. It was a war. The guest suite was larger than Avery's entire apartment. It was decorated in the same minimalist, cold style as the rest of the penthouse, grays, blacks, and sharp lines. Avery locked the door, then wedged a heavy chair under the handle. It felt ridiculous considering the host could probably punch through the wall, but it made her feel better. She sat on the bed, pulling her laptop from her backpack. Her hands were still shaking, but the rhythm of typing soothed her. She plugged in the flash drive Arthur had given her lawyer. Password required. Avery took a deep breath. Arthur had been a paranoid genius. He wouldn't use a birthday or a pet's name. He would use something only she would know. She typed, 0-day exploit. Access denied. She frowned. She tried the date they met. 091220118. Access denied. One attempt remaining. Data self-destruct initiated on failure. Avery froze. Arthur, you bastard. One attempt? She closed her eyes, thinking back to the last time she saw him. He was in the hospital bed, frail and dying. He had grabbed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Avery, he had rasped. The world is a machine. But every machine has a ghost. You're the only one who can see it. The ghost in the machine. She typed, ghost. The screen flashed green. Folders populated the desktop. Hundreds of them. Avery clicked on the first one labeled Project Nightfall. It wasn't code. It was a dossier. Photographs. Old ones. Tintypes from the 1800s, black and white photos from the 1920s, Polaroids from the 80s. In every single one of them, there was a figure in the background. Sometimes he was a soldier, sometimes a banker, sometimes a musician. But the face was always the same. Dante Ravenna. She scrolled down. There were reports, autopsies, and then a folder labeled the Ordo Venator. She opened it. A family tree appeared. The Pendleton line. But next to each name wasn't a job title. It was a rank. Hunter. Grand Inquisitor. Slayer. The text below chilled her blood. The Order of Hunters has used Pendleton technology as a front for 3 centuries. Our goal is the eradication of the hemophage scourge. Funding is diverted to weapons development, specifically designing UV-concentrated ballistics and silver nitrate aerosol systems. Current target, the King. Dante Ravenna. Avery gasped. The nephews weren't just greedy heirs. They were vampire hunters. They had been hunting Dante for generations. She clicked on a video file labeled, My Regret. Arthur Pendleton's face filled the screen. He looked healthy, sitting in his office. Avery, the video Arthur said. If you are watching this, I am dead. And you are likely in danger. I have a confession. I was born into the Order. I was raised to hate them. To hunt them. But I found something out. The war, it's based on a lie. Dante Ravenna isn't the monster they say he is. He's a guardian. He holds a truce that keeps the feral ones, the ones that actually kill humans, in check. If the nephews kill him, the truce breaks. Thousands of vampires will go feral. Millions of humans will die. Arthur leaned into the camera. I couldn't stop the Order. They are too deep in the board. So I made a game. A survival game. I knew you would go to him. You're the smartest person I know. You would realize he's the only safe harbor. You have the key, Avery. In the subdirectory, there is an algorithm. It's a gene sequencer. It can cure them. Or it can kill every single one of them instantly. Avery's breath hitched. The nephews want the kill switch. Dante wants a cure. You are the only one who can decrypt it. You have 30 days to decide who wins. Choose wisely, kid. The video ended. Avery sat in the silence, the weight of the laptop crushing her thighs. She wasn't just fighting for a company. She was holding the trigger to a genocide. A knock on the door made her jump so hard the laptop nearly slid off her lap. Avery? Dante's voice. Smooth. Velvet over gravel. I have brought you food. You need to eat. She stared at the door. She was in the room with the king of vampires. And outside, the hunters were waiting. She stood up, walked to the door, and moved the chair. She opened it. Dante stood there, holding a silver tray with a sandwich and a glass of milk. It was such a domestic, absurd image that she almost laughed. But then she looked at his eyes. They were weary. Ancient. You knew, she said. You knew Arthur was a hunter. Dante's expression didn't change. He walked past her, setting the tray on the desk. Arthur was a complicated man. We had a mutual understanding. He said you're a guardian, Avery said, closing the door. He said if you die, the truce breaks. Dante turned to her. Arthur talked too much. Is it true? Yes, Dante said simply. There are others. Older. Hungrier. They do not believe in coexistence. They believe humans are cattle. I keep them in line. I enforce the masquerade. And the nephews? They want to wipe us all out. Good, bad, indifferent. They don't care. Dante leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. So now you know. The stakes are not just your life, Avery. If I fall, Seattle falls. Perhaps the world. Avery looked at the sandwich. Then at Dante. She felt a strange shifting in her chest. Fear was transforming into something else. Determination. The file, she said. It has a gene sequencer. A weapon. Or a cure. Dante went very still. A cure. That's what Arthur said. A look of raw, naked longing crossed Dante's face, so intense it was painful to witness. For a moment, the predator was gone, replaced by a man who had been walking in the dark for 400 years. I have searched for a way to reverse this condition for centuries, he whispered. To see the sun again. To taste food. To age. He looked at her, and the intensity of his gaze pinned her to the spot. Can you decrypt it? I don't know, Avery said honestly. It's complex. It learns as I try to crack it. It will take time. You have 30 days, Dante reminded her. And you have to keep me alive that long, Avery countered. I will, Dante vowed. The shadows in the room seemed to bow to him. No one will touch you, Avery. I swear it on my blood. The sun rose over Seattle, but inside Nightfall Tower, the world remained a persistent, manufactured twilight. Avery woke to the smell of espresso and the low, thrumming hum of a server farm. For a disorienting second, she thought she was back in her dorm room, pulling an all-nighter. Then she saw the ceiling black frescoes depicting fallen angels, and the memory of the gunfight crashed back into her mind. She wasn't in a dorm. She was in the belly of the beast. She rolled out of the massive bed, her feet sinking into carpet that felt like moss. On the bedside table, a sleek black smartphone rested next to a steaming cup of coffee. A note was propped against the cup, written in handwriting so elegant it looked like calligraphy from a museum archive. Eat. Dress. The car leaves in 1 hour. We have a meeting. D. Avery picked up the phone. It was unlocked, displaying a single app, a direct link to the tower's security feed. She tapped it. The screen showed the lobby. It was pristine. The bullet holes were gone. The blood was gone. The only evidence of last night's violence was a pair of workmen replacing a marble panel near the elevators. Efficient, she muttered, taking a sip of the coffee. It was perfect. Hazelnut, 2 sugars. Just how she liked it. The detail sent a shiver down her spine. He had likely pulled her preferences from her digital footprint before she even walked through the door. She showered quickly, the hot water doing little to melt the ice of anxiety in her stomach. In the closet, she found her hoodie and jeans had been laundered and folded, but hanging next to them was a charcoal gray suit, tailored for a woman's frame. It was armor. Business armor. She put it on. It fit like a second skin. When she emerged into the main penthouse living area, Dante was waiting. He stood by the fireplace again, but this time he wasn't looking at the flames. He was reading a newspaper. An actual, physical newspaper. The digital age lacks the tactile satisfaction of turning a page, he said without looking up. He was wearing a fresh suit, navy blue this time, the cut severe and immaculate. He looked rested, though his skin still held that impossible pallor. Where are we going? Avery asked, adjusting her cuffs. Dante folded the paper and placed it on the mantel. He turned to her, his eyes sweeping over the suit. A flicker of approval crossed his face. The board of directors, he said. Or, as my kind prefers to call it, the Crimson Council. I cannot keep you here indefinitely without their knowledge. They will sense a human in the sanctum. If I do not present you, they will assume I have broken the laws of the masquerade and am keeping a pet. That would complicate things. The council, Avery repeated. Are they all like you? Vampires. Dante walked toward the elevator. Yes, but do not make the mistake of thinking they are like me. I am the king because I am the strongest, not because I am the most liked. Most of them would drain you dry before you could introduce yourself. He pressed the button. Stay close to me. Do not speak unless spoken to. And, whatever you do, do not show fear. They can smell it. Great, Avery said, her voice tight. No pressure. The car was a tank disguised as a luxury sedan. The windows were tinted so dark the city outside was a blur of gray shapes. They drove for 20 minutes, descending into the older, industrial district of Seattle, the underground. They stopped in front of a derelict theater. The marquee was shattered, reading only T___ED_R. Charming, Avery whispered. The aesthetic of decay appeals to the elders, Dante said dryly as the driver opened the door. They find it romantic. I find it dusty. They walked into the lobby, which smelled of mildew and old velvet. Dante didn't stop at the ticket booth. He walked straight to a heavy iron door behind the concession stand, placing his palm against the rusted metal. The door groaned, the sound like a dying animal, and swung open. Below, the world changed. It was a ballroom, preserved from the 1920s, lit by hundreds of beeswax candles that dripped red wax onto the floor. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of ozone, expensive perfume, and something copper-sharp that made Avery's stomach turn. Blood. Scattered around the room on velvet divans were a dozen figures. They were beautiful in a terrifying, uncanny way. Stillness. That was the marker. They sat with a predatory stillness that humans couldn't replicate. As Dante entered, every head turned. Ravenna, a voice hissed. A woman rose from a chaise lounge near the center. She was tall, with hair like spun silver and eyes that were entirely red, no white, no iris, just pools of crimson. She wore a gown of white silk that trailed behind her like spilled milk. Lady Vesper, Dante acknowledged, inclining his head a fraction of an inch. I see you haven't dusted. Vesper ignored the jab. She drifted toward them, her gaze locking instantly on Avery. Her nostrils flared. A heartbeat, Vesper whispered, a smile spreading across her face that revealed needle-thin fangs. Loud. Frantic. Delicious. She is not food, Dante said. His voice was low, but it carried a weight that made the candlelight flicker. She is a consultant. A consultant? A man stepped out of the shadows. He was massive, built like a brawler, with scars crisscrossing his bald head. Since when do we consult with cattle, Dante? Since the cattle learned how to aim missile guidance systems at our havens, Titus, Dante replied coolly. The room rippled with uneasy laughter. Dante placed a hand on the small of Avery's back. The touch was cold, but grounding. This is Avery Clark. She holds the key to the Pendleton archives. Vesper stopped 3 feet away. The smell of her was overwhelming, lilacs and rot. Pendleton. The hunters. She looked at Avery with renewed interest. You are a traitor to your kind? I'm a survivor, Avery said. Her voice shook, but she forced her chin up. Arthur Pendleton left me his company. His nephews want to kill me for it. I figured my enemy's enemy might be interested in a deal. Vesper laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of bone. Brave little rabbit. Or stupid. She is under my protection, Dante announced, his voice rising to fill the cavernous room. I claim the Just Vitae over her. Her blood is mine. Her life is mine. If any of you touch her, you answer to me. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The casual malice evaporated, replaced by a sharp, jagged tension. Just Vitae. The right of life. It was an ancient claim, rarely used. It meant she was property, yes, but it also meant harming her was an act of war against the king. Titus stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. You claim a human? While the hunters grow bolder. We should be culling them, Dante, not betting them. Watch your tongue, Titus, Dante warned. The shadows around his feet began to swirl, rising like black smoke. Or what? Titus sneered. You've gone soft, king. Spending too much time in your glass tower, playing CEO. Maybe it's time for new blood on the throne. It happened in a blink. Dante didn't walk. He materialized in front of Titus. He grabbed the massive vampire by the throat and slammed him into a marble pillar. The stone cracked, spider webs of fracture shooting up to the ceiling. Do not mistake restraint for weakness, Dante snarled, his face inches from Titus's. His eyes were pitch black again. I play CEO because if I played vampire, the humans would nuke this city before sunset. I keep you alive, Titus. I keep the sheep from realizing there are wolves in the fold. Do not test me. He dropped Titus, who fell to his knees, gasping for air he didn't need. Dante straightened his jacket, brushing imaginary dust from his lapel. He turned back to the room. Avery Clark is off limits. She is working on a project that concerns the survival of our species. Give her a wide berth. He offered his arm to Avery. Come, Miss Clark. The air here is stale. Avery took his arm, her legs trembling. As they walked out, she could feel the eyes of the council boring into her back, a dozen pairs of predators watching a piece of meat walk out the door. In the car, the silence was deafening. Avery stared out the window at the passing city, her mind replaying the violence she had just witnessed. Thank you, she said quietly. Dante looked at her. For what? For that? Saving me from Titus. I was protecting my asset, Dante said, his tone clipped. He looked out the window, his jaw tight. Do not romanticize it, Avery. To them, you are a juice box with legs. To me, you are a hard drive. That is all. Avery looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the tension in his shoulders. She saw the way his hand gripped the leather armrest until the knuckles turned white. You're lying, she said. Dante turned to her, surprised. Excuse me? You're not as cold as you pretend to be, she said, emboldened by the adrenaline still coursing through her system. You could have killed Titus. You didn't. You could have let Julian kill me in the elevator. You didn't. You talk about strategy and assets, but I think you're just. Just what? Dante's voice was dangerous. Lonely, Avery finished softly. Dante froze. The air in the car dropped 10 degrees. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. Be careful, Avery. You are dissecting a predator while your head is in its mouth. Before Avery could respond, the car swerved violently. Tires screeched. Metal crunched. The world spun upside down as the heavy sedan was T-boned by a massive force. Glass shattered. The car rolled once, twice, coming to rest on its roof. Avery hung suspended in her seatbelt, coughing as smoke filled the cabin. Dante, I'm here. His voice came from the darkness beside her. Are you hurt? I don't think so. Cut the belt. We have to move. Now. Avery fumbled for the buckle. She managed to release it, dropping onto the roof of the car. She crawled toward the broken window. Outside, it was chaos. They were on a deserted industrial road. 3 black SUVs had boxed them in. Men in tactical gear were pouring out, but they weren't holding normal guns. They were holding rifles with bulky, glowing blue attachments. Ultraviolet concentrate, Dante hissed, pulling Avery out of the wreckage. Damn them. The nephews. Avery coughed. Mercenaries. Funded by them. A beam of concentrated blue light sliced through the air, hitting the pavement near Dante's foot. The asphalt hissed and smoked. Run, Dante commanded. He pushed her toward a warehouse. Get inside. Don't look back. What about you? I will buy you time. No. Avery grabbed his arm. They have UV weapons. They'll burn you alive. I am hard to kill, Dante said, a grim smile touching his lips. Go. He shoved her hard. Avery stumbled back, then turned and sprinted toward the rusted doors of the warehouse. Behind her, the battle began. It wasn't like the elevator. This was harder. Dante moved like a blur, dodging the beams of light that crisscrossed the air like laser tripwires. But he couldn't dodge them all. A beam caught him in the shoulder. Smoke erupted from his suit. Dante roared, a sound that was not human, a primal shriek of pain and rage. He didn't stop. He tore the door off one of the SUVs and hurled it like a frisbee, crushing 2 mercenaries. Avery reached the warehouse door. It was locked. She pulled out her phone, jamming it into the electronic keypad. Come on, come on. She glanced back. Dante was surrounded. 6 men. 6 beams of light. They were corralling him, forcing him into a circle of concentrated artificial sunlight. His skin was blistering, turning black where the light touched it. He was burning. Dante, she screamed. She looked at the keypad. System override. Industrial lighting control. Her brain made a connection. This wasn't just a warehouse. It was a shipping facility. It had external floodlights. Big ones. If I can't turn them off, she muttered, her fingers flying, I'll blind them. She hacked the grid. Command, overload. With a massive pop, the floodlights on the exterior of the warehouse and the streetlights for 3 blocks exploded in a shower of sparks. The sudden surge of electricity arced down the power lines. The mercenaries' UV rifles, connected to battery packs, surged. 3 of them exploded in the men's hands. The others shorted out, the blue lights dying instantly. Darkness reclaimed the street. And in the darkness, the king was unchained. The screams that followed were short and wet. Avery squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her hands over her ears. She didn't want to know. She didn't want to hear. A minute later, silence fell. Avery. She opened her eyes. Dante stood 10 feet away. His suit was in tatters. His skin was angry, red and blistered, steam rising from his shoulders. He looked like he had walked through a furnace. But he was standing. He walked toward her, stumbling slightly. The grace was gone, replaced by raw exhaustion. You, he rasped. You overloaded the grid. I created a localized surge, Avery said, her voice trembling. She reached out to him, hovering her hands over his burns, but afraid to touch. You're hurt. It will heal, Dante said. He looked at her, his eyes wide with something like wonder. You stayed. We had a deal, Avery said. 30 days. You could have run. In the confusion. I told you, Avery said, meeting his gaze. I'm not a mouse. Dante let out a breath that shuddered in his chest. He leaned against the warehouse wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the dirty concrete. The immortal, invincible vampire looked suddenly very mortal. My phone is destroyed, he said. My driver is dead. We are 5 miles from the tower. Avery sat down next to him, heedless of the grime on her expensive suit. Then we walk. Or steal a car. I can hotwire anything made after 1995. Dante turned his head to look at her. The red burns on his face were already fading, the skin knitting together before her eyes. Why? He asked. Why help me? I am a monster. You saw what I did to those men. They were trying to kill us, Avery said. Self-defense isn't monstrous. Besides, she paused, picking at a loose thread on her knee. Arthur said you were the only one who could save the city. I believe him. Dante closed his eyes. Arthur was a fool. And so are you. Maybe. Avery checked her smartwatch. But I'm a fool who just saved your life. So that makes us even. Dante chuckled. It was a weak sound, but it was real. Even. No human has ever been even with me, Avery Clark. First time for everything. She stood up and offered him a hand. Come on. We need to get back. I have a code to crack, and you have a suit to replace. Dante looked at her hand. The small, fragile hand of a human girl who hacked traffic lights and blinded hit squads. Slowly, he reached up and took it. He pulled himself up, towering over her again. But the dynamic had shifted. The fear in Avery's gut was gone, replaced by a strange, simmering heat. And in Dante's eyes, the distance was dissolving. Lead the way, Miss Clark, he said softly. Back at the penthouse, the atmosphere had changed. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore, it was companionable. Dante retreated to his quarters to heal. I require Earth, he had said cryptically, leaving Avery alone with the laptop. She sat by the fire, the glow of the screen illuminating her face. She opened the gene sequencer file again. The code was a mess. It was a labyrinth of biological data and encryption algorithms. But as she stared at it, she began to see a pattern. It wasn't just random data. It was a map. A map of the human genome, overlaid with a viral strain. Hemophage V, origin, unknown. Date, 1600s. Arthur had left notes in the margins of the code. The virus rewrites the DNA. Freezes cellular decay. Induces photosensitivity. Increases aggression. The sequence is locked. If we unlock it, we can reverse the right process. Or, we can accelerate the decay. Avery highlighted a section of code. It was the kill switch. If she activated this, it wouldn't cure vampires. It would cause their cells to undergo rapid necrosis. They would crumble to dust in seconds. It would be so easy. One keystroke. The nephews would win, but the monsters would be gone. She looked up at the door to Dante's room. She remembered him standing in front of her, taking the UV burns. She remembered the look in his eyes when he talked about the sun. She began to type. Not the kill switch. The cure. Hours passed. The rain returned, lashing against the glass. You are working late. Avery jumped. Dante was standing behind the sofa. He was healed. The burns were gone, his skin flawless porcelain once again. He was wearing a black cashmere sweater and lounge pants, less armor, more human. I found something, Avery said, rubbing her eyes. Dante moved around the couch to sit on the coffee table, facing her. Tell me. The virus. It's artificial, Avery said. Dante frowned. Impossible. It is a curse. A plague. No, Avery turned the laptop toward him. Look at the syntax. Biological evolution is messy. Random. This? She pointed to a perfect double helix structure on the screen. This is clean. Engineered. Someone made vampires, Dante. Dante stared at the screen. His face went pale. Made? Maybe an alchemist. Maybe a very early scientist. But this wasn't an accident. And, because it was engineered. It can be de-engineered, Dante whispered. Exactly. Avery tapped the screen. I can strip the virus out. But there's a catch. There is always a catch. The virus is what keeps you alive, Avery explained gently. You're 400 years old. If I strip the virus, your cells might remember their true age. You wouldn't become human, Dante. You might just die. Of old age. Instantly. The silence stretched between them. The fire crackled. So the cure is also a death sentence, Dante said, his voice void of emotion. It's a risk. I might be able to modify it. To keep the longevity, but remove the bloodthirst and the sun allergy. But it's going to take every bit of skill I have. Dante looked at her. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. He didn't touch her, but she could feel the cold radiating from his fingertips. Why would you do that? He asked. Why try to save the longevity of a monster? Because, Avery said, her breath hitching. I don't think the world is better off without you in it. Dante's hand closed into a fist, and he pulled it back. He stood up abruptly, walking to the window. You should sleep, he said roughly. Tomorrow, we begin training. Training? The nephews used UV lights today. Next time, it will be silver. Or fire. If you're going to stay by my side, Avery, you need to know how to fight. I cannot be your shield every second of the day. I'm a coder, not a ninja, Avery protested. Dante looked back at her over his shoulder. The firelight caught the sharp angle of his cheekbone. You are whatever I need you to be, he said. And right now, I need you to survive. The next morning, the penthouse had transformed. The furniture in the center of the room had been pushed aside. Mats were laid out on the floor. Dante was waiting, wearing a loose white shirt and pants that looked like traditional martial arts GI, but black. Lesson 1, Dante said as Avery emerged from her room, groggy and confused. Reaction time. He threw a knife at her. Avery shrieked and ducked. The knife thudded into the wall exactly where her head had been a second ago. Too slow, Dante critiqued. You hesitated. You processed the threat, analyzed it, then moved. You need to move before you think. Are you crazy? Avery yelled, staring at the knife quivering in the drywall. You could have killed me. I never miss, Dante said calmly. Retrieve the knife. Again. For the next 4 hours, Dante Ravenna, the Vampire King, beat Avery Clark black and blue. He didn't hit her hard, just enough to bruise, enough to teach. He taught her how to fall. How to use an opponent's momentum. How to find the weak points in a human body, throat, eyes, groin. By noon, Avery was panting, sweating, and lying flat on her back on the mat. I hate you, she wheezed. Dante stood over her, not even winded. He offered her a bottle of water. Good. Hate is a powerful fuel. Use it. He sat down next to her. The nephews rely on technology and distance. But if they breach the perimeter, it will be close quarters. You need to be faster than them. I'll never be faster than them, Avery said, sitting up and drinking the water greedily. No, Dante agreed. But you only need to be faster than their trigger fingers. He looked at her, his expression softening slightly. He reached out and brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead. This time, he didn't pull back. His fingers lingered on her temple. You have a sharp mind, Avery. But your body is fragile. Gee, thanks. It is not an insult. It is a fact. It makes me. He paused, searching for the word. Anxious. Avery's heart skipped a beat. You're anxious about me? I am anxious about the key to my salvation, Dante corrected quickly, pulling his hand away. But the lie was evident in his eyes. Suddenly, the elevator chime dinged. Dante was on his feet instantly, placing himself between Avery and the doors. But it wasn't mercenaries. It was a young girl, maybe 12 years old. She wore a school uniform and carried a violin case. She looked terrifyingly normal. Uncle Dante, she called out. Dante relaxed visibly. Clara, you are early. The girl walked in, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Avery. Who is the human? This is Avery, Dante said. Avery, this is Clara. She is. I'm his niece, Clara said brightly, dropping the violin case. She walked up to Avery and sniffed her. She smells like fear and coffee. Niece. Avery looked at Dante. I thought you were the last of your line. Clara is adopted, Dante said. She is of the Crimson Council. Lady Vesper turned her in 1920. Avery stared at the 12-year-old girl who was actually 100 years old. Oh, I'm here to help, Clara said, grinning and revealing jagged fangs. Dante says you need a bodyguard who can fit in small places. And I'm bored of piano lessons. Violin, Dante corrected. Whatever. Clara looked at Avery. So, are we going to kill the Pendletons? I hate them. They smell like bleach. Avery laughed. It was a hysterical, bubbling sound. Sure. Why not? Let's take the tween vampire to war. Dante looked at the two of them, the exhausted hacker and the lethal child. For the first time in centuries, the cold tower felt something like a home. Focus, Dante commanded. Clara, guard the perimeter. Avery, back to the code. We have 26 days left. Time in the tower moved like molasses, thick, dark, and sweet. Avery had lost track of the days of the week, measuring time instead by the rhythm of Dante's movements. He slept when the sun was highest, a death-like slumber in the sub-basement vault that no one, not even Clara, was allowed to enter. He rose with the setting sun, bringing the night with him. Avery sat on the floor of the penthouse, surrounded by holographic displays projected from the coffee table. Her eyes burned. Her fingers ached. You're grinding your teeth, a voice said from the shadows. Avery didn't look up. I'm thinking. Dante walked into the light. He was wearing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked like they were carved from marble. He carried 2 glasses. One held a dark, viscous red liquid. The other held sparkling water with lime. He set the water down next to her. Hydrate, he commanded softly. Your biological functions are inefficient when dehydrated. You're a nag, you know that? Avery took the glass, the condensation cold against her feverish skin. For a terrifying creature of the night, you worry a lot about my electrolyte balance. Dante sat on the sofa behind her, sipping his own drink. The copper scent of blood wafted through the air, sharp and metallic. A week ago, it would have made Avery gag. Now, it just smelled like him. I am protecting my investment, Dante said, the standard line he used whenever he showed kindness. I found a deadlock in the sequence, Avery said, pointing to the floating blue code. The viral strain has a failsafe. It's tied to a biological marker. If I try to strip the virus without the right enzyme, it triggers a cascade failure. Meaning if I use the cure on you without this enzyme, you don't turn human. You turn into a puddle of organic sludge. Dante swirled the blood in his glass. Disappointing. I would prefer not to be sludge. I need a sample, Avery said, turning to look at him. A fresh one. Not the stored stuff you drink. I need to see the virus in its active state. Dante went still. You want my blood? Just a drop. Directly from the source. The room seemed to shrink. The air grew heavy. In the vampire world, sharing blood was intimate, more intimate than sex, more binding than marriage. It was a transfer of soul. It is dangerous, Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. Fresh blood calls to the hunger. If I open a vein, the scent alone might drive me to feed. And you are sitting very close, Avery. Avery held his gaze. She saw the darkness swirling in his irises, the eternal struggle between the man and the beast. She shuffled closer until her knee brushed his. I trust you, she whispered. Dante stared at her. You shouldn't. I do. She reached out, taking his hand. She turned it over, palm up. Do it. Dante looked at her throat, his pupils blowing wide. He took a shallow breath, his nostrils flaring. Then, with a swift, jerky motion, he bit into his own wrist. He didn't flinch. A single bead of crimson welled up, dark and rich as a ruby. Avery quickly pressed a glass slide against the wound, collecting the sample. As soon as she pulled away, Dante vanished. He didn't walk, he blurred. He reappeared on the far side of the room, by the balcony doors, his back to her. His breathing was ragged. Process the sample, he choked out. Do not come near me. Avery fed the slide into the portable analyzer on the table. As the machine whirred, she looked at Dante's rigid back. She realized then that the monster wasn't the thing that wanted to kill her. The monster was the thing inside him that loved her, and he was terrified of what it would do. The piece didn't last. It never did. It arrived in a black envelope, delivered not by mail, but by a raven that smashed into the penthouse window, leaving a smear of blood and the letter tied to its leg. Clara retrieved it, wrinkling her nose. Melodramatic. It's from the council. Dante took the envelope. He broke the wax seal, an imprint of a skull and crown. He read the card, his expression hardening into stone. What is it? Avery asked. She was practicing Krav Maga forms on the mat, sweating through her tank top. The Obsidian Gala, Dante said. He crushed the card in his hand. The annual winter solstice ball. The council, the high families, and the shadow board will be there. The shadow board? The humans who know, Dante explained. Politicians, judges, billionaire tech moguls. Like Arthur Pendleton, Avery realized. Yes, it is a night of truce. No violence is permitted. Attendance is mandatory for the ruling families. Dante turned to her. If I do not go, it is a sign of weakness. It suggests I am injured or afraid. Julian will use that to rally the council against me. So go, Avery said. Schmooze. Drink blood out of crystal glasses. Do whatever vampires do at parties. I cannot go alone, Dante said. I need to present a unified front. I need to show them that I am not just holding the line, but that I have secured the Pendleton asset. Avery stopped moving. She wiped the sweat from her forehead. You want me to go? I need you to go, Dante corrected. As my guest? Under my protection. Dante, there are 3 men actively trying to murder me. Walking into a room full of vampires seems like a bad tactical decision. It is the safest place you can be, Dante argued. The truce is absolute. No blood can be spilled at the gala. If Julian touches you there, he is executed by the council. Instantly. It is the one place he cannot hunt you. And afterward? Afterward, we disappear again. But for one night, we hide in plain sight. He looked at her, his eyes sweeping over her gym clothes. Besides, you cannot wear sweatpants to the Obsidian Gala. The dress arrived in a box the size of a coffin. Avery opened it. It wasn't pink. It wasn't frilly. It was midnight blue, a fabric that seemed to absorb the light, shimmering like a starless sky. It was silk and velvet, structured and flowing all at once. It's a lot, Avery muttered, touching the fabric. It is armor, Clara said from the doorway. She was holding a makeup case. High neck to cover the jugular. Reinforced bodice, Kevlar weave disguised as corset boning. And the skirt is wide enough to hide 2 Glock 19s. Avery blinked. Kevlar corset? Dante doesn't take chances, Clara said, skipping into the room. Sit down. I'm going to make you look dangerous. 2 hours later, Avery stared at herself in the full-length mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her hair was swept up in an intricate twist, exposing the long line of her neck. The makeup was sharp, accentuating her eyes, making them look fierce. The dress fit perfectly, turning her body into a statue of elegance and power. She looked like a queen. Not bad for a coder, she whispered. The door opened. Dante walked in. He was wearing a tuxedo, but not a modern one. It was a tailcoat, cut from black velvet, with a high collar and a white cravat. He looked like he had stepped out of a 19th century painting. He looked breathtaking. He stopped dead when he saw her. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Dante didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stared, his gaze traveling from the hem of her gown to her eyes. "Is it too much?" Avery asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Clara said the Kevlar makes me look stiff." "You look." Dante started, his voice rough. He cleared his throat. "You look like a weapon, Avery. A beautiful, lethal weapon." He walked over to her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "One last thing." He opened it. Inside lay a choker made of diamonds and black onyx. "This was my mother's," Dante said quietly. "It has a protective ward. A tracking beacon. If you are separated from me, I will find you." He stepped behind her. Avery held her breath as his cold fingers brushed the nape of her neck. He fastened the clasp. The weight of the jewels was heavy, cool against her skin. "Do not leave my side," he whispered into her ear. His breath ghosted over her skin, sending a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. "I won't," she promised. The venue was an underground cathedral, a massive Gothic structure hidden beneath the foundations of the city's oldest museum. The air was cold, scented with lilies and expensive champagne. Music, a live string quartet playing something haunting and classical, echoed off the vaulted ceilings. When Dante and Avery walked in, the music didn't stop, but the conversation did. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them. Vampires in finery that spanned centuries. Humans in modern couture. Avery tightened her grip on Dante's arm. "They're staring." "Let them stare," Dante murmured. "Head high, Avery. You own this room." They descended the grand staircase. Avery felt the weight of the gazes, predatory, curious, jealous. She spotted Lady Vesper near the fountain, whispering to a tall man with pale hair. Vesper's eyes tracked them, narrowing. "Ravenna," a voice boomed. Julian Pendleton stepped out of the crowd at the bottom of the stairs. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing a suit that looked like a military dress uniform, complete with medals. Dante stopped on the last step, forcing Julian to look up at him. "Julian," Dante said smoothly. "I am surprised you were invited. Usually, the help uses the service entrance." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Julian's face flushed red. "Enjoy your night, Ravenna," Julian spat. "Eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow." "Tomorrow is another day you will fail to kill me," Dante finished. He brushed past Julian, pulling Avery with him. They moved into the ballroom. It was a swirl of color and motion. Vampires danced with humans, a deadly waltz of predator and prey pretending to be equals. "He's planning something," Avery whispered. "Julian." He looked too confident. "He is posturing," Dante assured her. "The truce is binding. The magic of this place prevents violence. Try to fire a gun, and the mechanism jams. Try to draw a blade, and it becomes heavy as lead." "Magic?" Avery asked skeptically. "I thought we were dealing with biology." "We are," Dante said. "But there are things even science cannot explain." The ancients had ways of enforcing peace. The music changed. A slow, melancholy waltz began. "Dance with me," Dante said. It wasn't a question. He swept her onto the floor. Avery stumbled slightly, but Dante caught her, his hand firm on her waist. He moved with that liquid grace, guiding her through the steps as if she weighed nothing. "I don't know how to waltz," Avery hissed, looking at her feet. "Look at me," Dante commanded. Avery looked up. His face was inches from hers. The world around them, the spinning dancers, the chandeliers, the danger, faded into a blur. There was only him. The dark depth of his eyes. The cold perfection of his face. "Follow my lead," he said softly. "Trust me." They moved together. Step, slide, turn. It became effortless. Avery felt a strange sensation in her chest, a blossoming of heat. She realized, with a jolt of terrifying clarity, that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was falling. "You decoded the sequence," Dante said quietly, his lips barely moving. "Almost," Avery replied. "Another 48 hours. And then." And then you have a choice. The cure. Or the weapon. Dante spun her, dipping her low. Her hair brushed the floor. He held her there for a beat, his face hovering over hers. I have already made my choice, Avery. He pulled her back up. The intensity in his eyes was scorching. Dante. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The music distorted, the strings screeching into a discordant wail. The crowd gasped. The truce holds, someone shouted. But the lights didn't just flicker. They died. Pitch blackness swallowed the room. Avery. Dante's voice was sharp. His hand tightened on her waist. Then a sound. A high-pitched whine, like a dog whistle amplified 1,000 times. Avery clamped her hands over her ears. It was painful, piercing. But around her, the reaction was worse. Screams erupted. Not human screams. Vampire screams. Dante let go of her waist, clutching his head. He felt his knees. Sonic dampener. He gasped. Avery blinked, her eyes adjusting to the sudden darkness. She reached for her phone, toggling the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark. What she saw was a nightmare. Every vampire in the room was on the ground, writhing in agony. The sound was incapacitating them, scrambling their enhanced senses, overloading their nervous systems. But the humans were standing, including Julian Pendleton. The emergency lights kicked on, dim, red, ominous. Julian stood in the center of the room, wearing heavy noise-canceling headphones. Beside him were 20 mercenaries, also wearing headphones and carrying the UV rifles. The truce prevents violence between guests, Julian announced, his voice amplified by a speaker system. But it doesn't say anything about pest control. He looked at Dante, who was struggling to stand, blood leaking from his ears. Grab the girl, Julian commanded. Burn the rest. The mercenaries moved. Avery's mind raced. It wasn't magic. It was tech. A sonic frequency tuned to the specific hearing range of chiropteran biology. It was brilliant. And it was going to kill them all. She looked at Dante. He was trying to reach for her, but his limbs were shaking, his coordination gone. Run, he mouthed. Avery didn't run. She reached into the hidden slit of her dress and pulled out the smartphone she had modified to hack the tower. Clara, she screamed. Where's the source? Clara was on the floor nearby, curled into a ball, whimpering. The speakers. She cried out. Everywhere. Avery looked up. The massive PA system speakers mounted in the corners. It was a wired system. If it's wired, it can be hacked. She didn't have time to crack the firewall. She needed a brute force attack. She sprinted toward the DJ booth on the balcony. Get her, Julian yelled. 3 mercenaries broke off, chasing her. Avery hiked up her heavy skirts and ran. She reached the stairs, kicking off her heels. She could hear the heavy boots behind her. She vaulted over the railing of the VIP section, landing hard on the balcony floor. The DJ, a human, was cowering under the table. Avery grabbed the mixing board. It was digital, connected to the building's network. She jammed her phone into the USB port. Come on, come on. A hand grabbed her hair. Avery screamed as she was yanked backward. A mercenary stood over her, his UV rifle glowing blue. End of the line, princess, he sneered. He raised the rifle, but to knock her out. Crack. The mercenary's eyes rolled back, and he crumpled to the floor. Standing behind him was Lady Vesper. She was bleeding from her nose, her skin gray with pain, but she was holding a broken champagne bottle. She had driven it into the man's neck. I hate loud noises, Vesper hissed, swaying on her feet. Fix it, human. No. Avery scrambled back to the board. The mercenary's headphones had fallen off. She grabbed them and jammed them onto her head. She keyed into the frequency controls. 18,000 hertz. That was the weapon. She didn't turn it off. She inverted it. She cranked the frequency down to 20 hertz. The brown note. A subsonic rumble that caused nausea and disorientation in humans, but was barely audible to vampires. She hit execute. The high-pitched whine vanished instantly, replaced by a low, vibrating thrum that shook the floorboards. The effect was immediate. The mercenaries doubled over, clutching their stomachs. 2 of them vomited instantly. Julian stumbled, his equilibrium shattered by the sudden shift in pressure. On the floor, the vampires gasped, the pressure on their brains released. Dante stood up. He didn't wipe the blood from his ears. He didn't fix his suit. He looked at Julian, and for the first time, Avery saw the face of the King of Nightmares. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. His fangs fully extended, his eyes glowing a distinct, hellish red. "You broke the truce," Dante roared. The sound was louder than the speakers. He moved. It was a slaughter. Avery turned away. She couldn't watch. She focused on the mixing board, keeping the subsonic frequency locked, keeping the humans incapacitated. She heard screams. She heard the tearing of metal and the breaking of bone. She heard Julian shouting orders that turned into gurgles. And then silence. The subsonic hum stopped as Avery pulled the plug. The ballroom was a ruin. Bodies, mercenaries, were strewn everywhere. The Vampire Council members were standing amidst the carnage, looking feral, their finery stained. In the center of the room, Dante held Julian by the throat. Julian's feet dangled a foot off the ground. He was alive, but barely. His military suit was shredded. "Do it," Julian wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. "Make me a martyr." "The order. We'll burn the city." Dante's hand tightened. His claws dug into Julian's skin. He was going to rip his head off. Avery could see it. The beast had won. "Dante!" Avery yelled. Her voice rang out clear in the silent hall. Dante froze. He didn't turn, but his shoulders tensed. Avery walked down the stairs. Her bare feet slapped against the marble, sticky with blood. She walked through the field of bodies, approaching the monster who held her enemy. "Don't kill him," Avery said calmly. Dante turned his head slowly. His face was terrifying, spattered with crimson, eyes burning. "He tried to kill you. He tried to kill us all. If you kill him here," Avery said, stopping just out of reach, "he wins. He proves you're a monster. He proves the truce is a lie. And his brothers will launch the missiles before his body is cold. He deserves to die," Dante snarled. "Yes," Avery agreed. "But not like this. Not by your hand in a room full of witnesses. We need him alive to access the Order's mainframe. He's the only one with the biometrics." Dante looked at Julian, then at Avery. The red in his eyes began to fade, retreating into the black. The claws retracted. "You are pragmatic," Dante whispered. "I'm a businesswoman," Avery said, her voice trembling only slightly. "And he is an asset. Leverage." Dante dropped Julian. The man hit the floor like a sack of wet cement, gasping for air. "Take him," Dante commanded the council guards who were slowly emerging from the shadows. "Throw him in the dungeon. If he speaks, cut out his tongue." He turned to Avery. He looked at her bare feet, her ruined dress, the headphones still around her neck. He walked over to her. He didn't care about the audience. He didn't care about the blood. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. "I thought I lost you," he breathed against her skin. He was shaking. Avery wrapped her arms around him, holding the monster tight. "You can't get rid of me that easily. We have a contract." They didn't go back to Nightfall Tower. It was compromised. If Julian could hack the gala, he could hack the tower. They went to a safe house. A cabin in the Olympic Peninsula, surrounded by miles of dense, rain-soaked forest. It was off the grid. No internet. No satellites. Just a generator, a fireplace, and the silence of the trees. They had Julian in the cellar, bound with silver chains. Clara was watching him, playing mournful tunes on her violin to annoy him. Upstairs, the mood was somber. Avery had managed to salvage the hard drive from the tower before they fled. She was working on an old offline terminal Dante kept in the study. "The sequence is complete," Avery announced. It was midnight. The fire was dying. Dante was cleaning a gun at the table. He looked up. "It is done." "Yes. I have the cure. And I have the weapon." She held up 2 flash drives. Blue for the cure. Red for the kill switch. Dante stood up. He walked over to her. He looked at the drives. "And the catch?" he asked. "I fixed the age issue," Avery said, a proud smile touching her lips. I found the enzyme in your blood sample. It acts as a bridge. If you take the cure, you won't die. You'll just become mortal. You'll age normally from this point on. You'll have maybe 40, 50 years left. Dante stared at the blue drive. 50 years. Instead of eternity. 50 years in the sun, Avery countered. 50 years of tasting food. Of feeling warmth. And the weapon? If I upload this to the global atmospheric servers, it releases an airborne pathogen. It targets the vampire gene. 100% mortality rate within 24 hours. Give it to me, Dante said. Avery handed him the drives. He held them, weighing the fate of his species in his palm. What will you do? Avery asked. I will destroy the weapon, Dante said. And I will keep the cure. Perhaps, one day, when the war is over. He walked to the fireplace. He raised his hand to throw the red drive into the flames. Click. The sound of a hammer cocking echoed in the quiet room. Dante froze. Avery turned. Clara stood in the doorway. She wasn't holding her violin. She was holding a gun. A large caliber hand cannon that looked comically big in her small hands. The barrel was pointed at Dante's heart. Don't burn it, Dante, Clara said. Her voice wasn't the voice of a child anymore. It was cold, ancient, and weary. Clara. Dante lowered his hand slowly. What are you doing? I'm saving us, Clara said. Tears streamed down her porcelain face. I'm saving us from you. Put the gun down, Clara, Avery said, stepping forward. Stay back, Clara shouted, shifting the aim to Avery. I like you, Avery. You're funny. But I will kill you. Why? Dante asked. His voice was heartbroken. I saved you. I raised you. You cursed me. Clara screamed. The sound was agonizing. You made me a child forever. I have been 12 years old for 80 years, Dante. Do you know what that is like? To never grow up? To be a doll? To be a pet? She sobbed, the gun shaking. Julian promised me, Clara whispered. He promised if I got him the weapon, he would give me the cure. He said the cure only works on one. That there isn't enough enzyme for everyone. Is that true, Avery? Avery went cold. She looked at the data. The enzyme, it's synthetic. Hard to produce. But we can make more. He said there's only enough for one dose right now, Clara said. I want it. I want to grow up. I want to be a woman. I want to die an old lady. She looked at Dante. Give me the drives. Both of them. Or I swear I will blow a hole in your chest. Dante looked at the girl he had treated as a daughter. He saw the decades of resentment he had been too blind to notice. Clara, Dante said softly. If you give Julian the weapon, he will kill us all. Including you. He swore, Clara said. He swore a blood oath. Hunters don't keep oaths to monsters, Avery said. I'm not a monster. Clara shrieked. I'm a little girl. She fired. The bullet didn't hit Dante. He moved too fast. But he didn't attack her. He dove in front of Avery. The bullet hit Dante in the stomach. He grunted, falling back against the desk. Clara scrambled forward, snatching the drives from his hand. I'm sorry, Uncle Dante, she wept. I just want to grow up. She turned and ran into the night. Dante slid to the floor, blood dark and precious, pooling on the rug. Dante. Avery dropped to her knees, pressing her hands against the wound. It wasn't healing. Silver. Dante gasped, his face gray. Silver nitrate round. Hold on, Avery cried, tearing her shirt to make a bandage. I'll get the med kit. Don't you dare die on me. Let her go, Dante whispered, gripping Avery's wrist. His grip was weak. She is fast. You cannot catch her. She has the weapon, Dante. She's going to give it to the other nephews. They're coming. Dante looked at her, his eyes dimming. Then we have a problem. Outside, the sound of helicopter blades chopped the air. Bright searchlights cut through the windows, blinding them. This is the Ordo Venator. A voice boomed from the sky. Surrender, and your death will be quick. Avery looked at the window, then at the dying king in her arms. 26 days were up. The game was over. And they had lost. The cabin shook as the helicopter downdraft slammed against the roof. Dust drifted down from the rafters, coating Dante's blood-slicked shirt in a fine gray powder. They aren't attacking, Dante rasped, his voice a wet rattle. They are waiting. Avery tied the tourniquet tighter around his abdomen. Her hands were steady, a terrifying, unnatural calm had settled over her. Waiting for what? Sunrise, Dante said. He gestured weakly to the grandfather clock in the corner. 5:14 a.m. 40 minutes. They don't need to breach. They just need to keep us pinned until the sun burns the house down around us. Avery looked at the window. The searchlights were blinding, turning the forest into a stage for their execution. We can't stay here, she said. Can you walk? No, Dante admitted. The silver was poisoning him, halting his regeneration. Every heartbeat pumped toxin through his veins. Leave me, Avery. They want the king. If you walk out with your hands up, Julian might. Julian is in the cellar, Avery reminded him. And Julian is our ticket out. She stood up, grabbing the heavy iron poker from the fireplace. Stay awake. Do not close your eyes. She ran to the cellar door and threw it open. Julian was awake. He was battered, bruised, and chained to a support beam, but he was smiling. He had heard the helicopters. Hear that? Julian sneered as Avery descended the stairs. That's the sound of the cavalry. Give it up, bitch. It's over. Avery didn't speak. She walked up to him and swung the poker. It connected with his ribs with a sickening crunch. Julian screamed, doubling over as far as the chains allowed. Listen to me carefully, Avery said, her voice low and devoid of empathy. I have nothing to lose. I have a dying vampire upstairs and a death squad outside. If I'm going to die, I'm going to make sure I take the Pendleton heir with me. She raised the poker again. Wait. Julian gasped. What do you want? Your comms, Avery demanded. The frequency for the command unit outside. I don't have. She swung again, stopping an inch from his knee. 450.25. Julian yelled. Channel Bravo. Avery lowered the poker. She grabbed the radio from his belt, the one they had confiscated but hadn't cracked. She tuned it to 450.25. This is Avery Clark. She's spoken to the mic. I have Julian Pendleton. He is alive. But he is currently soaking in gasoline. Static crackled. Then a voice, cold, professional. This is Commander Marcus Pendleton. Proof of life. Avery held the radio to Julian's mouth. Say hi to your brother, Julian. Marcus. Julian screamed. She's crazy. She broke my ribs. Get me out of here. We hear you, Julian, Marcus replied. Miss Clark. What are your terms? I want a vehicle, Avery said. Armored. Keys in the ignition. You pull your men back 1 mile. If I see a single laser sight, I light a match. And Dante? Dante is dead, Avery lied. He succumbed to his wounds 10 minutes ago. I'm the only one left. I just want to live. A long silence stretched. Agreed, Marcus said. 1 vehicle. You have 10 minutes. Avery cut the connection. She looked at Julian. You're coming with us. As a shield. She unlocked his chains but kept the cuffs on his wrists. She shoved him toward the stairs. Move. Upstairs, Dante had dragged himself to a sitting position against the wall. He looked like a fallen angel, pale, beautiful, and broken. We're leaving, Avery said. She grabbed Dante's arm, slinging it over her shoulder. Julian is going to help us. Julian looked at Dante, his eyes widening at the sight of the silver poisoning. He really is dying. Help me carry him, Avery ordered. Why would I? Because I have a gun pointed at your kidney, Avery lied, pressing the cold end of the poker against his back. In the chaos, he didn't know she had dropped it for the radio. Julian grunted and took Dante's other side. Together, they hauled the vampire king out the back door. The armored SUV was there, idling. The clearing was empty, but Avery could feel the eyes of the snipers in the trees. Get in, she hissed. They shoved Dante into the back seat. Avery jumped into the driver's seat, forcing Julian into the passenger side. She locked the doors. Where are we going? Julian asked, rubbing his wrists. There's nowhere to run. We aren't running, Avery said, slamming the car into gear. We're going to the source. She floored it. The SUV tore down the logging road, mud spraying. What source? Julian demanded. Ravenna Corp., Avery said. The server farm. Why? Because that's where Clara is going, Avery said grimly. She thinks she's trading the drive for a cure. She doesn't know she's walking into a trap. Clara is a monster, Julian spat. She deserves what she gets. Avery looked at him. She's a 12-year-old girl who wants to grow up. You manipulated her. She's 100 years old. And she's still a child, Avery said softly. She looked in the rearview mirror. Dante's eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow. Hold on, Dante, she whispered. Just a little longer. They reached the city as dawn broke. The sun was rising, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink colors that meant death for Dante. Avery drove into the underground parking structure of Ravenna Corporation. It was dark here. Safe. She parked near the service elevator. Get out, she told Julian. She cuffed him to the steering wheel. You're leaving me here? You're safe here, Avery said. If I don't come back, well, enjoy the car. She opened the back door. Dante was barely conscious. The silver lines on his skin had turned black. Dante, she shook him. We're here. I need you to wake up. His eyes fluttered open. They were milky, the iris fading. Avery, I need access to the mainframe, she said. Your biometrics. It's the only way to stop the upload. Clara. She's upstairs. I know it. She helped him out. He was dead weight. She practically dragged him to the elevator. Inside, she pressed his hand to the scanner. Access granted. They ascended to the penthouse. The doors opened. The penthouse was wrecked. The furniture was overturned. And in the center of the room, by the main terminal, stood Marcus Pendleton. He was flanked by 10 soldiers. And Clara. Clara was holding the blue drive. Marcus was holding the red one. He had it plugged into the terminal. A progress bar on the giant screen read, Upload, 89%. You're late, Marcus said, turning to face them. He was older than Julian, colder. He looked at Dante with pure disgust. And you brought a corpse. Dante. Clara gasped. She took a step forward, but a soldier aimed a rifle at her head. Stay put, abomination, Marcus snapped. You said you would cure me. Clara cried. I gave you the weapon. There is no cure for what you are, Marcus said cruelly. Only extermination. Once this upload is complete, the aerosol distribution system will activate. Every vampire in North America will be dust by noon. Including you. Clara's face crumpled. The betrayal broke her. Avery dragged Dante to a pillar and propped him up. She stood up, facing the gunman. Cancel the upload, Marcus, Avery said. Or what? Marcus laughed. You're a coder, Avery. Not a soldier. You have no weapons. No backup. And your vampire boyfriend is busy dying. I have one thing, Avery said. She pulled out her phone. I have the encryption key. Marcus paused. What? The drive is encrypted, Avery bluffed. The file you're uploading? It's garbage data unless it's unlocked. If the timer hits 0 and it's not decrypted, it deletes the servers. All of them. Including the Pendleton database. Marcus looked at the screen. The progress bar was at 94%. He hesitated. He didn't know the code like she did. He was a businessman, not a hacker. Pause the upload, Marcus ordered his tech guy. The bar stopped at 95%. Give me the key, Marcus demanded. Let them go, Avery said, pointing to Clara and Dante. Let them leave. Then I give you the key. No, Dante roared. He pushed himself off the pillar. He was shaking, bleeding, burning from the inside out. But he stood. Do not give him the weapon, Avery. Silence. Marcus shot Dante in the leg. Dante fell, but he didn't scream. He just glared, his eyes burning with a hate that could scorch the earth. Last chance, Marcus said, aiming the gun at Avery's head. The key. Avery looked at the screen. Then she looked at Clara. The girl was weeping, clutching her violin case. Avery's eyes widened. She remembered what Clara had said weeks ago. I'm bored of piano lessons. But she carried a violin case. And the case was heavy. Clara, Avery said softly. Play us a song. Clara looked up. She saw Avery's gaze dart to the case. She understood. Clara didn't reach for the violin. She popped the latches on the case. Inside wasn't an instrument. It was a modified submachine gun. Clara grabbed it. Cover your ears, Avery yelled, diving for Dante. Clara pulled the trigger. The room exploded in noise. Clara didn't aim, she sprayed. She was a whirlwind of small, angry violence. The soldiers, caught off guard by the crying child, dropped like flies. Marcus dove behind the desk. Kill them, Marcus screamed. A firefight erupted. Bullets chewed up the drywall. Glass shattered. Avery dragged Dante behind the heavy oak bar. She's buying us time, Avery yelled over the gunfire. I have to get to the terminal. It's suicide, Dante groaned. It's Tuesday, Avery retorted. She took a deep breath. Cover me. With what? Dante looked around. He grabbed a bottle of high-proof whiskey and a lighter from the bar. Go. Avery sprinted. Dante lit the rag stuffed in the bottle and hurled it. The Molotov cocktail smashed into the group of soldiers near the terminal. Fire engulfed them. Avery slid across the floor, dodging bullets, and reached the keyboard. Marcus popped up from behind the desk, aiming at her. No, he fired. Avery felt a hot sting in her shoulder. She cried out but didn't stop. She slammed her hand onto the enter key. Command, purge. The screen flashed red. Upload cancelled. Deleting files. No, Marcus screamed. He ran at her. Avery spun around, but she was too slow. Marcus grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the console. He raised his gun to her temple. You ruined everything, he spat. I will kill you slowly. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. Marcus looked up. Dante was there. He shouldn't be able to stand. He shouldn't be able to move. But he was there. The firelight reflected in his black eyes. The beast had consumed him completely. He wasn't fighting the silver anymore. He was burning through it with sheer, unadulterated rage. Get your hands off her. Dante grabbed Marcus's gun hand and crushed it. Marcus shrieked as bones pulverized. The gun clattered to the floor. Dante grabbed Marcus by the neck and lifted him into the air. He walked to the shattered window. The wind whipped through the room. The sun was fully up now, a golden beam slicing across the floor, inching closer. You wanted to see the sun, Marcus? Dante hissed. Look at it. He held Marcus over the edge. 50 stories down. Please, Marcus begged. I'll give you anything. Money. Power. I have power, Dante said. And I have her. He dropped him. Marcus's scream faded into the distance, abruptly silenced by the pavement below. Dante stood by the window. The sunlight was hitting his shoe. He turned around. The room was silent. The soldiers were dead or fled. Clara was sitting on the floor, panting, holding her empty gun. Avery was slumped against the console, clutching her bleeding shoulder. Dante, she whispered. The sun. He looked at the encroaching light. It was inches away. He couldn't move. The adrenaline was fading. The silver was taking hold again. He collapsed. No. Avery scrambled to him. She grabbed his collar and pulled. Clara. Help me. Clara ran over. Together, they dragged the heavy vampire king into the shadows of the alcove, just as the sunlight swept across the spot where he had fallen. Avery ripped open his shirt. The wounds were black, oozing. He wasn't breathing. Dante, she slapped his face. Wake up. You don't get to die after winning. That's a cliché. He didn't move. The cure, Clara whispered. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the blue drive. You said the enzyme bridges the gap. It heals. It's a retrovirus, Avery said, her hands shaking. It rewrites DNA. It might purge the silver. Do it, Clara said. Avery ran to the console. She plugged in the blue drive. She quickly coded a delivery command to the automated medical synthesizer built into the penthouse wall, a panic room feature Dante had shown her once. Synthesizing serum. Seconds ticked by. Complete. A robotic arm extended from the wall, holding a single injector gun filled with glowing blue liquid. Avery grabbed it. She ran back to Dante. She positioned the needle over his heart. If this is wrong, she whispered, tears falling on his face, I'm sorry. She plunged the needle into his chest and pulled the trigger. Dante convulsed. His back arched off the floor. A guttural roar tore from his throat. His veins turned blue, then black, then red again. He seized once, twice. Then he went still. Avery waited. She put her ear to his chest. Silence. No, she sobbed. No, no, no. She buried her face in his shirt. Come back. You promised. Clara sat beside her, pulling her knees to her chest, watching silently. A minute passed. 2. Then, a sound. Thump thump. Avery froze. Thump thump. Stronger. Slower. But steady. Dante took a deep, ragged breath. His eyes snapped open. They weren't black. They weren't red. They were gray. Human gray. He blinked, looking up at the ceiling. He looked at Avery. It's warm, he whispered. What? Avery asked, wiping her tears. I feel. He lifted his hand. He looked at the sunlight inching toward his fingers. Slowly, terrified, he reached out. His hand entered the beam of light. He didn't burn. He didn't smoke. The light just danced on his skin, golden and warm. He laughed. It was a joyous, broken sound. He reached further, pulling his whole body into the sun. He lay there, bathed in the light he hadn't felt in 400 years. Avery, he said, looking at her with wonder. I'm warm. Avery laughed through her tears. She crawled into the sunlight with him, lying on his chest. Yeah, you are. The coffee shop in Paris was crowded. Avery sat at a corner table, typing on a tablet. The merger is complete, she said without looking up. Pendleton Tech is officially a subsidiary of Ravenna Corporation. The new board is compliant. Good, a voice said across from her. Dante Ravenna lowered his espresso cup. He looked different. He had a tan. There were fine lines around his eyes when he smiled, signs of aging, signs of life. He wore a casual sweater, looking less like a predator and more like a man at peace. And Clara, he asked. She's enrolled in a boarding school in Switzerland, Avery said. Under a new identity. She's adjusting. Being a teenager is hard, even when you have 80 years of experience. She will be fine, Dante said. She has time now. We all do. He reached across the table and took Avery's hand. His skin was warm. Are you happy, Avery? He asked seriously. Avery looked at him. She thought about the 30 days of terror. The running. The fighting. The choice she had made to save a monster and find a man. She closed her tablet. I have $50 billion, a global tech empire, and a boyfriend who is historically literate and looks great in a suit, she smiled. Yeah, I'm happy. Dante smiled back. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Then let's go, he said. The Louvre is open. And I believe I look better in the paintings than the current subjects do. Avery laughed, standing up. They walked out of the cafe, hand in hand, into the bright, beautiful afternoon sun. The monster was gone. The girl had saved him. And in doing so, she had saved herself.